It is now time to have a casual conversation for the beneficial good of our community. The show you are about to listen to is called What's Up, Castleberry? And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you your hosts, Andy and Drew.
Oh, and don't forget that lovely producer, Robin.
Welcome back to the What's Up, Castleberry podcast.
Woohoo!
It's episode 65. Andy and Drew. Well, we are Castleberry residents, friends, local pastors. We're all about having casual conversations for the good of you, listener. Whether you live in Castleberry, maybe you live in the booming metropolitan of Winter Springs or Oviedo or Longwood or wherever you are, we are here for you. And we hope that we bring things of value to you. No doubt about it. Andy, speaking of value, I found a deal and I went ahead and I purchased the show, The Office. The Office, we reference this show quite a bit on our little podcast here. I bought all the DVDs. I have all 9 seasons, including extra footage and bloopers and all that stuff. I'm super, super psyched.
That is our favorite show, Drew. We often talk about that, and I realize that is lost on a lot of people who don't watch the show. But you know what? When The Office left Netflix, I did exactly the same thing. For like $30-$40, I bought the whole series, but I gave it to my son as a gift, saying, hey, here you go, Merry Christmas. But really, it's for us as well, because we got Peacock as well. Do you guys have Peacock?
We did not. You got it because there's English soccer, I'm guessing.
That's right.
Motivations, yeah.
And The Office, but on Peacock, you can't have multiple users at different times. So only like one of us can watch The Office without jumping around and that kind of stuff. So having the DVDs has proved very helpful. One of the things I do love about Peacock, though, is the show.
Disclaimer: this episode is not sponsored by Peacock, but continue.
Thank you. Free trial for a week if anyone wants to try it.
Just put in the code "What's Up, Castleberry."
Yeah, see how far that gets you. It's not like Culver's where we give free ice cream at Culver's. It's you got to pay for that. But Everybody Loves Raymond. Do you guys remember that show? Is that an old man show, or if you guys remember that?
Oh, that show's hilarious. No,
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
It is so good. And honestly, I look at that show and I see so much of myself in Ray as this bumbling husband. And I see so much of Tracy as this patient wife. It is uncanny. So I'm actually enjoying going through that as well. But I'm glad you got the DVDs. Another reason I'm glad you got the DVDs, Drew, is there's a lot of talk that some of the episodes may be canceled as, a culture continues to change and advance. And maybe some of it needs to be canceled from the mainstream. But now you've got the DVDs, you will always have those episodes that many may not have.
That's right. We will have all the jokes at the Taylor house, at the Searles house, no matter, how crass or crude. We will have jokes. And speaking of jokes, you knew it was coming.
That's why you brought this up for that transition. Oh my goodness. That's almost as bad as the joke you're going to tell itself.
Listener, it is time. Let me just give a little background. If you are a new listener to our podcast, welcome first and foremost. Yes, this is how Andy and Robin and I kind of get into every episode, but we in fact have dad joke of the week. Andy and I are both dads. We're both corny in our own way. And I got to tell you, I'm getting more and more text messages and messages from Facebook and other mediums saying, hey, here's my favorite dad joke. Hey, why don't you consider this dad joke? So Andy, regardless of your stance, I think the dad joke's got to stay. It's becoming popular. Here we go.
All right. I don't know if I am ready for it, but I know you're going to do it anyway.
Well, that's exactly right. I'm doing it anyway. I'm just going to address Robin with this. Robin,
Yes, sir.
What did baby corn say to mama corn?
I don't know.
Where's popcorn?
See, you only told that to Robin because you knew you'd get a response from her. Can I just say about that joke, though, Drew? That was incredibly corny.
There we go. There it is. The dad of
Andy,
the week.
for someone who claims to not like this segment. You tell more dad jokes in this than he does. Passive aggressively, of course.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that, but it's probably true.
Sometimes we love things, sometimes we hate things, but if it generates a response,
Maybe I'm just jealous that Drew owns this section. Maybe I want to own it or something subconsciously.
Now we're getting to the root of it. Okay.
I'm willing to share the love. Well, one thing that we are willing to share and do share every single episode of our podcast, we like to talk about current events and things that are going on in the news here locally in Castleberry. And Andy and I have had some interesting exchanges in the last week or so, touching on a subject that honestly is both funny as well as sad. If you were unaware, perhaps, in fact, you were driving around the Legacy Park community right up the road and on Seminole Boulevard a couple of weeks ago of this recording, a man took a car, I believe it was his car, went to a house, got into an argument, drove off in a rage, ran into the car of the home that he was visiting, and then proceeded to run his car into the Legacy Park retention pond. Andy, you forwarded me that message, and we kind of had a chuckle at just responding out of anger and things going awry. And we sort of thought that was the end of the story. But then the story took another turn when the man who apparently in the initial interaction threatened physical harm, including threatened fire upon the lady's house. Well, he returned to the scene just a day or two later, and he did indeed set fire to the woman's home. The man is now currently in jail, and the judge had an interesting retort when he said, "I'm sorry I let you out in the first place." So just a lot going on there. We're thankful the Castleberry police was on the scene. They took action. They took pride in making sure that everybody was kept safe for the most part. No human beings that were reported were injured other than this gentleman. And but yeah, a lot going on, a lot to unpack there. Andy, any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, well, I sent you the article initially, one, because it was Castleberry related, right? And secondly, because of our love for The Office, right? So here's this guy driving into a lake or a retention pond, and that same scene plays out in The Office, and it's hilarious because they just ham it up. So, ha ha ha, guy drives car into a retention pond. But the comedy turned into a tragedy, when he was released from jail, and then he starts this fire and causes all kinds of turmoil. And so what started off, as a joke really became something very serious, and I felt bad about making it into a joke. And so as I'm reflecting on the story now, as it's played out, I see it as a tragedy, and seeing it as a tragedy reminds me that we need to take care of each other. Because we all have crazy ideas. We all get angry. We all do dumb things in anger. Fortunately, we don't do things that dumb. But one of the reasons I think I don't do things that dumb is because I've got good people around me who want to listen to me, who will support me, who will talk me off the edge, who will counsel me, and who will just be a good friend. So to tie a bow in this rather bizarre Castleberry-based story, I would just encourage our listeners, as I encourage you and I, let's just keep strengthening friendships, because when we have good friendships in our life, we can calm one another down, we can process anger, we can develop positive traits and positive responses to each other. So yeah, crazy, bizarre comedy that turned into a tragedy. But the lesson for me is let's not do life alone. It never works well when we do life alone.
Today's podcast sponsor is Legal Shield, and they have a little ditty just for you. Affordable attorneys, it's not an illusion. If you've got legal issues, Legal Shield, we've got the solution. Identity theft, you've heard of that. It happens every day. People's lives being ruined. ID Shield to the rescue. We've got the solution. This is just life. What you gonna do? Give Pat Weber a call at 386-405-3595. She can help you. Protecting you, your family, and your business too. Legal Shield and ID Shield, the best protection for you. Check out Pat Weber and Legal Shield. Thanks, Legal Shield.
All right, listeners, welcome back to our 65th interview on the podcast. We are still not getting too good at this, but fortunately we have some great guests who carry this section of the show for us. Today is no exception. We have a gentleman with us who's been a friend of mine for many, many years, a friend of Drew's for many, many years, and he leads an organization in Castleberry that is influencing the world. His name is Brett Clemmer, and he works for Man in the Mirror. Brett, when most people think of Man in the Mirror, they think of Michael Jackson. So as an icebreaker, let's start with that. What is your favorite Michael Jackson song and why?
Well, besides Man in the Mirror, for obvious reasons,
obviously,
and I'll tell you that story in a second. But I remember being in high school, going to the roller rink, and our roller rink, and I grew up outside of Boston. So the roller rink had a big video screen, and this was like when MTV was actually used to play music videos. Mm-hmm. And the Thriller video was like the big, huge thing when I was in high school. And so I remember that funky dance that they did. And you remember that little Thriller?
You know, it's a shame this is a podcast, Brett. Otherwise, we'd have you see if you still got those moves.
Oh, I do. Trust me, I do.
Can you hit the Thriller though? That's a pretty high note.
I can't sing, but I can dance.
I like that, Brett. That's amazing. In fact, my wife was actually watching the Michael Jackson one of his documentaries the other day, and we were commenting on just how literally he was so famous at the time. He could walk into a room and just thousands of people would scream. Oh, it's kind of Andy gets a similar kind of rep here in Castleberry.
I don't even get that in my own home, Drew. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Brett, tell our listeners just a bit about yourself. You mentioned you grew up in Boston. Share briefly, if you would, about your family and just some of the things that are kind of going on in your life right now, things you're passionate about.
Yeah, I grew up in New England. My wife's from Connecticut. I'm from Massachusetts. I went to a little liberal arts school outside of Boston called Tufts, and my dad was actually working on Wall Street, and so the church that they were going to in Fairfield, Connecticut, I moved back home after college to try to figure out my life, and went to church to be polite because my parents were going every Sunday, and happened to meet the pastor's daughter, and she's this beautiful blonde woman who captured my heart, and so we ended up dating and got married, and then we moved to Florida almost right away. That was 29 years ago. And so we started a family together, raised two awesome kids that are both in their 20s now. And my daughter lives locally, just left Universal Studios, which broke my heart, because when you have a single daughter that loves you a lot, she gives you her extra pass to the theme park that she works for. So we've literally gone to the Universal parks at least a couple dozen times together over the last few years. But she just left there and now works for another IT company. And then my son works up in Chattanooga and is married. I've been with Man in the Mirror for 20 years. I had a software company before that in downtown Orlando, and then I used to work for the Coalition for the Homeless and was involved in the social service sector of Orlando in the 90s pretty deeply in the downtown area.
Man in the Mirror, been based in Castleberry for at least 20 years, right? In Wilshire Plaza. And then now you've got your offices on 436, just towards the south end of time. Whether they know it or not, many of our listeners will have driven by your offices and may do so on a daily basis, but they don't know what happens there. So tell us what happens out of your Man in the Mirror offices.
Yeah, we moved down by the BioLife, where they do the blood plasma stuff on 436 by Lake Howell about 4 years ago. And it was great. As you said, we were in Wilshire Plaza and for over 20 years in Wilshire Plaza alone. So Man in the Mirror has been around Castleberry forever, it seems. And we work with guys all around the country, actually even all around the world. And our focus is on helping men become the great fathers and husbands that they want to be, and figure out how to balance their work and their life, figure figure out the faith part of their life. And so out of our offices in Orlando, we're developing resources. We're developing books for guys to read and studies for them to do. And then we actually have a team of staff around the world. And so they'll come to Orlando for training and meetings and stuff like that. And so we have about a little over a dozen staff here in Orlando, and then another 65 or 70 guys around the country in the U.S., and then a couple dozen actually internationally as well.
Wow, that's amazing, Brett. And like the name of your organization says, you're about investing in men. And, just as an aside listener, I knew Brett from years ago when his son, Jackson, was going into the 9th grade, and got to invest a little bit of time in him over his high school career, and still to this day consider Jackson a friend. And Brett, I watched you model kind of fatherhood and being a man to not only Brett, but to many others. What would you say in terms of kind of the goal and vision of Man in the Mirror? What does success look like in regards to how you kind of care for men?
What a great question. I think, first of all, Man in the Mirror is actually the perfect name for us, despite the fact that Michael Jackson has a song. But really, even what that song is about is what we're about. We want guys to look at themselves, to know who they are, to figure out who they were made to be, and how they can fill the roles that they have in their lives as successfully as possible. We want them, like I said, we want them to be great dads, great husbands, great workers, whether that's an employer or an employee, and to really be a benefit in their community. And so I think that defines success is when you can look at the different roles that you've been put in your life, and you are making a positive impact on the people around you. That they say we're a Christian organization, so there's a verse in the Bible that talks about having a life that's worth imitating. And so I think we want to help men have lives that other men or other people would look at that life and say, you know what, I would like to have a life like that. I think that would be a great life to have, is the life that guy is leading.
That's great. So from here in Castleberry, you're impacting the world, and just kind of delving a little deeper into this man thing. What are some of the commonalities that you see among men around the world, right? So often we say, he'd be a different way if it wasn't for his culture or his setting, that kind of stuff. If you were to describe the challenges and opportunities and what a man looks like from your work around the world, what would you say are some of the commonalities that you see in men?
Let me say first, my perspective is going to really come from guys in America and Asia, and a little bit of European guys. So not Eastern Asia, Southeastern Asia. So not really a lot of Western Asia or Eastern Europe. I wouldn't have that perspective, or even really South America that much. But based on that, here is what I do see, because it's remarkable to me how similar men are around the world that I've dealt with in many different cultures. They're all concerned about meaning and purpose. They're all concerned about relationships, and they don't necessarily do a great job at them all the time, but they want to have good relationships with a spouse or a girlfriend, and their kids, and friendships, which is I think a whole area that guys are struggling. I think that's actually the area that guys are struggling the very most with right now, is the whole area of friendships. And they want to understand what success looks like, and so they're looking to define success maybe by their job title, like their status. They may be defining their success by their possessions or their bank account. They may be defining it by their kids' success. I think a lot of dads in particular fall into the trap of they're successful when their kids are successful. I think this is one of the reasons that youth sports are so absolutely crazy. Been in some little league games and some youth football games when my kids were growing up that I was far too concerned with my 9-year-old's stat line on his little league team, like that was actually going to have an impact on his life, whether he batted well in a little league game. I think guys are really trying to figure out what, we have a phrase, success that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So finding success that actually matters, and I think is what most men are really striving for.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And frankly, convicting in many ways that where do I spend my time? What am I valuing? What am I looking at in terms of success? That's really, really helpful for Andy and I both. And for other listeners, Brett, we definitely recognize that there's something to be said. We kind of close each episode of the podcast with like a little sort of inspirational quote, typically something that's sort of self-reflective, encouraging those who listen to take a moment to evaluate kind of what's going on and who are they, what changes can be made. Why is it essential that we would encourage those, particularly men, to do the hard work of kind of self-evaluation of who you are and who you want to be?
I think a lot of guys get caught up in what I call survival mode. And I think if you really, especially over the last year and a half, right? I mean, with the whole pandemic, and it's funny, I was actually going back and reflecting on some stuff that I had written back then about, from the perspective, I don't know if you guys remember, but like in April, we were thinking, in a couple months, we'll be through this.
A couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. You remember that? And I remember I was telling people it was going to be 4 months. And people are like, man, it's not going to be 4 months. I'm like, trust me, it's going to be 4 months. Well, I mean, it's been 14 months and we're still, probably another few months, at least, from anything resembling the new, whatever that new normal is that we're going to end up at. So I think if you're not careful, you can wake up one day and realize that years have passed and you haven't been intentional about who you want to be, and you don't have close relationships because you haven't worked hard at them, and so your kids don't really know you, and your marriage is kind of mediocre, and your career, you haven't really paid attention to your career because you've just been sort of trying to get to the next annual evaluation, or can you get a little bit more money somewhere so that you can, whatever that is, get a new car or go on that vacation that you've wanted to go on. And so I think when guys aren't intentional and they aren't reflecting, and this isn't just a guy thing, by the way, I think this is for really all of us. When they're not reflecting, their life happens to them. But when you are reflecting, when you are really paying attention and saying, this is who I want to be and this is where I want to go, and you're having those, and these are the relationships, the quality of the relationships that I want to have, then you're much more able to create the kind of life that you feel like you were made for, that you want to have. And you can have you'll have a much greater impact on those around you if you're doing it on purpose than if you're just sort of taking it as it comes.
I love that. I forget who it was. Maybe you guys more scholarly than I can remember. Who was it that said the unexamined life is not worth living?
Yes, Socrates said that.
Socrates.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Socrates. Sure. I think so too.
One of those Greek philosophers said it.
Yeah. Socrates was also a Brazilian soccer player, and I often get the two confused.
Of course,
so it's a thing. So Brett, just kind of again moving into that a little bit. You said that men specifically seem to have a problem with relationships and reflecting, but if we can get the relationship piece right and the reflection piece right, there's a lot of good that can happen in a man's life. As someone who leads an organization that really seems to understand men and what they're looking for and has had a lot of success speaking into that, what would you say to some of our female listeners about what they need to know about men that they may not think of?
So you just asked me on a podcast to tell women what to do? You're crazy.
I'd rather ask the question than answer the question.
I'm not falling for that.
We're trying to make this viral. We're trying to make this go big.
Let me rephrase. What do women want, Brett?
Yeah. There we go. Well, what I think there is. I think your question's good. What do men need from the women in their lives? Maybe is that kind of what you're asking for?
What do they need to know? Because men don't do relationships really well, because we don't reflect, and because often we don't communicate well, that kind of creates a relational barrier, right? What's something that women need to know about men that men have a hard time expressing?
I think one thing, and I can't. I'll speak for myself. Probably the best way to do that.
Smart move.
I think first of all, there's a funny meme out there of a man and a woman, like they're either in a car or laying in bed, and she's got this huge thought bubble about all the things that she thinks he's thinking about. And all he's trying to remember is, did he turn his computer off at work? Or, he's not. I think there is a certain extent where that's sort of I think she's probably closer to right than he is. I think that men really do have a lot of deep thoughts going on in our lives. We are really concerned about, most men I know, it doesn't take much to find that they really are thinking about, am I messing my relationships up? Am I messing up at work? Am I likable? Am I really reaching my potential? Am I doing it right? I think most guys walk around really unsure of how well they're doing, but we're scared to death to tell anybody that we're struggling with that. And so I think one of the things that I would say to most women is that most of the men in your life do not get enough encouragement anywhere. And one of the things that you could do for the men in your life, your husband, or even your dad, or some of your male friends, is to encourage them, just to and when I say encourage, I mean give them some kind of positive feedback, to find something that they're doing right and give them some praise for it. Because I think most of us walk around only hearing about the things that we're not doing well, and if we hear silence, we figure that people are just being too polite to tell us what we're not doing well. And so I think that's one of the greatest things that a wife can do for a husband, or a girlfriend can do for a boyfriend, or a female friend can do for a male friend, is just give them affirmation and encouragement about the things that they're doing right, and how much they're, if they're making a difference in your life, to tell them that.
I love that encouragement. We can never hear that enough. As we get ready to wrap up our conversation, Brett, thank you so much for your time. You've been just a great guest, and have provided some real insight. Maybe a closing question would be just, could you share encouragement for the men that are listening, who do serve the roles of being a worker, a husband, a dad, a friend? What would you want to encourage guys in kind of their journey in this current season we're in?
Here's what I would say, with a few notable exceptions. Men are noble. Almost every man that I know would die for his family in a heartbeat if he was called on to do it. He would jump in front of a speeding car to save his child, or he would step in front of a mugger or a threat if the people that he loved were threatened, and would be willing to die for them. And many men, I think, give up some of their dreams and hopes in order to do what they have to do to support a family, or to make a difference in other people's lives. And so that's what I would just say, is that most men are noble. And we can live up to that. We can be better than we are. All of us can. We can always improve in that area. But the way that we're made is we are made to be noble, to be sacrificial, to die for other people if that's what we're called to do.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great encouragement to wrap up with. Men, be noble, do the right thing, and that's who you are made to be. Brett, 2 quick questions as we close out. I know we've just scratched the surface of a big topic. First of all, during this conversation, your phone went off and it was playing Smash Mouth. What's up with that?
I'm so sorry. I just love that song. I get knocked down, but I get up again, because you're never going to keep me down. I love the sentiment of the song. So.
That's good. And I think that's a great encouragement to our guys, some of who, maybe our listeners, some of who feel like they've been knocked down, get back up again.
I didn't stage that. That really is my ringtone.
It's what we do. And secondly, Brett, because we've just scratched the surface of what is a huge issue and challenge and problem in our society, how can folks get in touch with you or find out more about Man in the Mirror if they want to discover more about what it means to be an authentic man, about what it means to work for success that matters and build better relationships, those kind of things?
Yeah, well, we got the easiest website to remember in the world, maninthemirror.org. And at maninthemirror.org, you can find literally hundreds of articles that you can download for free, you can read for free, and videos that you can watch, probably into the thousands. But we're a content development machine sometimes. And so there's lots of stuff there that you could go and hit that search bar and type in something that you want to read more about, a topic that you're interested in, and then all of our contact information is at maninthemirror.org as well.
That's great. Brett, thank you so much. It is a blessing to hear you talk about men and some of these important topics, but it's also a great blessing for our community to know that within our boundaries, we got this little office that is impacting the world. And we're so grateful for your leadership and for your influence and for the significant role that you and Man in the Mirror play in who we are as a community. So thank you so much for being our guest today. Man, what a great conversation that was, Drew. I really appreciate Brett's depth of insight, his understanding. And I do hope that some of our listeners will find out more about Man in the Mirror and dig a little deeper into some of the things that he talked about. But as we close, your inspirational quote is inspired by the context of that conversation. What do you got for us today?
That's right, Andy. Listener, we felt like it was appropriate. The theme of the organization, Man in the Mirror, pulled out a quote from Michael Jackson's famous song. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that
change. I'm starting with a man in the mirror.
You got to start with yourself, listener. You got to focus on becoming the best person you can be. And then out of starting with yourself, take a look in the mirror, make a change. It might be a small one. Maybe it's just learning to sing a little bit better. Maybe bringing joy to your neighbor, your family, your friend. Do something to make the world a better place. It starts with you, and it starts today. If you want to make the world a better
place, take a look
at yourself and make that
change. Robin, you were supposed to join us. Where were you?
I don't know. It's all you guys. It's all you.
That is so funny. All right, listeners, we are so sorry to end the show on that note because that note was way off key. But I hope you've enjoyed the interview. I hope you've enjoyed early sections. And we do apologize for trying to entertain you with our singing that sounds probably like a cat that is under some distress in your neighborhood. True. Don't give up your day job. Okay, this podcast was produced by producer Robin. For more information, please check out our website, Facebook page, Instagram, or podcast feed. All of them have the name What's Up Castleberry. Like and subscribe to our podcast, and please rate and review us. Until next time, and we promise we won't sing next week. Have a great one. Take care.